Now, coming to
hmm
the people side, the employee side, right?
hmm
That period wasn't just technically hard. The COVID time was not technically hard, it was emotionally
Yeah.
heavy also. How did you
Yes.
protect your teams from burnout when the work can't stop and the pressure just kept coming?
Yeah. So I had a couple things. So one, the team was largely remote to begin with. We had offshored teams into both India as well as Uruguay. So we had some US based devs, some Canadian based devs. So like no one like there was an office, but I think there was like, 5 people and it was mostly sales. Not a lot of technical people in the New York office. So we were ready for that part. And on the sort of like where it got, where it was tough was um, for at least on the sort of remote nature, I was a bit more prepared for because the startup I had left in November 2019, ironically, sold was a company focused on how to make remote work profitable. And we had to sell it at a
Okay.
at a modest exit because our investors didn't think remote work would ever take off. November 2019. That one still hurts. But I think from having worked at that company, I saw the data. I could make a really compelling case of like this is how you structure a well functioning culture in a remote environment. And I was able to bring that expertise in and sort of get more than just the technical team to a sort of like a happy remote place. So that was really helpful. But the other piece was just sort of acknowledging that I needed people to be innovative, that we were facing a crisis, that it was changing day to day. People would be out with COVID. People had family members that were passing from COVID. So you didn't know the resources that you had. You didn't know who was going to be sort of emotionally ready and available. So you had to have a culture that it couldn't be a culture that when they turned on their camera on Zoom, that there was a culture of fear. It couldn't be like I am showing up to work and I'm leaving fear at home and I'm coming into a fearful office, like a fearful, digital office. So what I try to do is say, I want to promote innovation. I want to promote excitement. I want to promote a sense of ownership, saying we can't solve everything, but we are actually in this healthcare system. We have this little piece of this COVID pie. Like we have a mission here and like we could do something good. We could actually help the world, our little piece of it, this way. So that bit of sort of sense of ownership I think was good. It built some camaraderie. There was sort of double-edged sword to that. Sort of a flip side is that, well, once you do the numbers and you say, well, if our system goes down, this is how many people might die. It's a little more, it becomes terrifying and fearful again. So you have to sort of walk that line between, yes, you're in it, you're part of this, you're part of the solution, but there are stakes with that. The other half then meant it's like, okay, well, if you are burning out, if I sense that you are sort of not fully there, making sure that you had team members that were working on those projects. So the stack at the time had a lot of sort of key person risk, a lot of pockets of knowledge. And this felt actually like a good time to say, hey, let's slow down. We're not actually going to do as much. If it isn't like directly related to COVID, we're not doing it. No new features unless it is solving our scale problems. Cut everything out. And that made some customers unhappy, but it's like, look, man, this is chaos. We are, the boat's on fire. I'm not so worried about how fast we're sailing. I got to put out the fire first. So part of that meant slowing down, but that gave us the flexibility to sort of pair up devs and say, great, I want to make sure that everyone has sort of a buddy, that everyone feels like, oh, I can bounce ideas also off of on as I tackle these things, but also meant that I was de-risked as a manager, saying, great, if someone gets ill, if someone is sick, if someone is having a tough time with family issues and needs to step out, I always have another person who understands that part of the stack and can sort of keep the team going. So no one person becomes a blocker, and then we could sort of all play. We all had sort of that sense of safety of like, I can take time off if I need to. And then, of course, I had to make sure that people who needed the time off actually took it. So that was a big point. I think at some points I was working 100-hour weeks, but I also knew that like, hey, when I didn't need to work those 100-hour weeks, I took the time back. And I think that was sort of my strategy is like, when things are tough, I may ask you to step up, but I am not going to forget that. It's not like you suddenly go back. It's like, great, you worked a really hard week, but you got it done. Take time. Just like be an adult, go take a break, go walk, go get outside, leave your apartment, try to do something fun because, we had to be sort of either, high on all the time, getting things done because there was a crisis that bubbled up, or great, no, take a break. So part of that I think was, again, when you have downtime, when you have that in a crisis, make sure your team is taking it, that they step back and they get that recharge moment.
Wow. There, in what you have stated, right? There are many learnings for our young leaders, young founders, team managers. So I think they can learn a lot from this experience. Next, I come to something which is very closer to your heart, which you would like to talk about more. You stepped away from NASA and chose to work with
Mhm.
small businesses, mostly tour operators, activity platforms, and local entrepreneurs. Why did this mission matter to you personally?
Yeah, it was hard to leave NASA, but I always knew that my time in NASA, given my fellowship, the White House relationship, was always had a time boundary on it. And I thought about staying at NASA longer and converting, but a lot of the projects I was working on have been defunded, so it wouldn't have worked out anyway. But I think what I was looking for was sort of back to that comment I had at the beginning, was something where there was a mission, right? Where I was doing something that made the world a little bit better. And when I had a friend of mine who was on a board of one of the companies that I'm now sort of the CTO for. He reached out and said, "Hey, I think you should look at this company." And I was like, I don't see it. This is not really me. It's like it's booking software for tours and activities. Like, why this?" But what I when I started talking to the team members and to the CEO and to others, I was like, "Oh, okay, like I get it. There is something there that is of value." And what I sort of didn't quite connect the dots on at first was that this was an ecosystem of people who, like me, sort of they were doing what they do not for the money but for the love of it. That these were people who, a lot of our customers were just small businesses who just loved, like, hey, no one gets into a like a kayak or a boat rental business unless they really love that. It's not something it's not a super lucrative business to do day in and day out. These are people working nights and weekends to keep their business. This is their baby. And I think that having that sort of buy-in and that excitement and commitment and seeing people like, like this is their love, their passion was exciting for me because I've been in those businesses. I've been that person who's like, I'm doing this because I love this. I want to solve this problem for people. I want to make their lives better. I want to do X, Y, and Z. So working with that community has been really rewarding. And if I look at it as like, well, if I can make their lives better, then, they win. They have more time with their families. They make more money. Their customers, right? The end users, the renters, whoever it may be, they have a better time. And also then we make more money. So like there's a real win-win here that if we do a better job at building software, then everyone in the ecosystem actually has a better time doing something that they're passionate about, that they love. And while some of these things are, it's a kayak rental, it's like it's not changing the world. But some of these things are, are small nonprofits in the arts, are museums, places which are cultural institutions and reflect sort of the local businesses for a small community, saying, hey, it's a small fishing town with a castle from the 14th century, whatever it may be. So the more people that you get to take tours of the castle, the more money is put into that small community that doesn't go to like the big cities in Europe or wherever it may be. And being able to say, yeah, it's a small business, small community supporting group was also really exciting because I grew up in New Orleans and we are very much a tourist driven city. And I know like when tourism leaves and it ebbs and flows, it really impacts everything from schools to, the funding for everything else. So if I can sort of help those sort of tourism driven local and small economies sort of survive and thrive, that I'm doing, a lot more good than just like, making sure someone has a nice kayak tour. That there is actually a ripple effect that is pretty important.
Wow, wow. That's a very deep thought. You are saying that small businesses support families and communities, right? And for countries like India, where small businesses power the economy, what learnings you have to give these new founders who
Mm.
are just entering into a small business, and how are they going to adopt AI?
So, so yeah, so I mean, I actually lived in Pune for a while, working
Wow,
for a business, yeah, a business based out of New York, but we had our whole dev team was based in Pune, so I was there for quite a while, and I love it. It's actually my favorite city in India. Sorry, no hate for everybody else, but I have a place my heart for Pune. But what I think was right is that like the Indian economy does have like the big players, the Tata, et cetera. But there was a lot of small business, right? A lot of small shops and thriving businesses. And I think there's a bigger gap of those sort of like middle-sized companies that maybe have better growth in the US than they do in India. That's again just my take that there's a mid-sized companies
Yes.
struggle. And I don't quite know why, but I would say that there's a one of the things that I would say is that I see a divide with early founders in that some founders build before they sell. And these are typically the very technologists, heads down. I got, great grades and I got into the top university and I know AI. Cool. That's great. But that actually doesn't mean anything because AI is not a business. It's just a technology. So if you can't sell something and solve a problem for a real person and then sell it again and again, you don't really have a business. You just have a tech project that has, a credit card integration. It's not a business yet. So if you are a technologist and you're trying to start a business, make sure you have a very strong salesperson as a partner. Is that someone who's like really just loves selling and really wants to understand your customers and understand their problem? And I see that the technologists usually join up together and they don't bring in that salesperson. And the flip side is also true. And I saw this a lot, I think, with some of the smaller Indian based and Southeast Asian based companies that they have very strong sales, but they will sell anything. And they just bend over backwards to give sort of that white label, oh, we'll just do whatever you want. That works to a degree, but at some point you have to say, well, if I'm modifying everything I do for every customer, I haven't actually come up with a business. I'm just doing software development. I'm a dev shop. It's a services business. And like that, there are a lot of service business, but that is a very hard competitive business to get into because of I think sort of it's pretty successful and there's a lot of it in India and Southeast Asia. So the price point for competing in that, it's not a technology, it's not product. And making that transition from services to product is very hard. I've been in some businesses to try to make that because who they've hired, what type of talent they hire, how they think about their IP, how they're incorporated, all of those things actually look different in a services business than they do in a product oriented business. So I would say is like, if you sell something, great. But if you sell it a second or third time and it doesn't actually look like they're starting to, 80% the same thing, you haven't actually found the right thing yet. And sometimes it's okay to actually churn a customer. It's like, nope, I don't want to solve that problem for you because it's too far from what I'm actually trying to do as a business. It's okay to say no to a customer. And I think that's the other sort of recommendation I have for founders is that like if you are that strong salesperson, just because you can make money doesn't mean you have a business or at least a product business. And AI is a technology of abstraction. And part of that means you have to have some sort of repeatability to make the AI useful and differentiated. Oh, we can always do this. So a niche is actually way more valuable if you say no one else can do this because there are 100 people, but this problem is so hard that that none of them can solve it, but I could. Even if you only have 100 customers, if they are willing to pay a lot more because that problem is so hard, you actually have a much better business than I'm building an AI, I can do everything for everyone. So again, that sort of like that broad sales services sales mindset, which I think I see a lot more in sort of like in my Indian partners and colleagues than I have in the US, which is very like, oh, we just build a tech, but it makes no money. Spend lots of investor money building cool computers and software that no one needs. So there is a balance that I think both sides of the coin have to find.
Gaps even we also find in Indian market, and we are trying to solve that gap through the podcast, educating students and young professionals who are listening to us. We come to the last round, rapid fire. First thing what comes to your mind?
Shoot.
Okay. Are you a builder or a strategist?
Strategist.
Wow. Code at night or early mornings?
At night. Late into the morning.
One habit that keeps you grounded?
Things. I'm always surprised to see like what people are building, and it helps me say, "Oh yeah, we could do that. Why haven't I thought of that?" So like, just keep perusing GitHub for cool ideas.
One book that changed how you think?
Ooh, book called Switch by Chip and Dan Heath. It's about how to communicate better ideas that people are unintuitive ideas. Really great book.
I'll put it in the link. What do people get wrong about the future of AI?
It will replace jobs, yes, but it will also create a lot of different jobs. Social media killed a lot of print journalism unexpectedly. It's like Facebook killed newspapers. Didn't see that coming. But it created a whole ecosystem around social media management, influencers as a business, YouTube, Twitch, like all of that emerged from social media. So I would say if you are worried about losing the job that you thought you were going to have, yeah, you're right. You probably will. But the opportunity is to then create a job that doesn't exist. Find value, find a problem and solve it, and then just give yourself a title.
Most of the jobs which like YouTubers, influencers, we didn't perceive it 5 6 years back, right? People making money on that. So similarly, we are entering the age of AI. Where should AI not be used?
For software, it's really bad at architecture and business. So if you know you have a scaling problem, it can help you think through that, but it will not be able to predict where your customers will have that problem. At some point, you actually have to talk to people and you have to get real information about their pain points and collect that and ask follow-up questions. And AI can help with the pieces of that. But if you ask, like, what are these customers struggling with? What AI will tell you will be wrong always. So you have to talk to the real customers because AI is not going to point you to enough of a clear problem to make a business out of it. You have to get out of the office. Go actually experience the problem. And once you understand that, great. Have AI help you get to the rest.
One thing every young technologist should stop doing.
Every what technologist?
Young technologist or young
Young. Okay.
professionals, students should stop doing.
Stop doing. Let's say LEET coding is going by. It should have gone by a long time ago. It's a terrible, terrible metric for success. The companies that use it are maybe not the most forward-thinking companies. The thing you should be focused on is what are the topics that a level 3 or level 4 engineer would only learn through experience that you can now learn from AI. And that is about scale and load and maintainability patterns and all those things. Like that's what I would expect a junior dev to like. If you can learn that, I don't care that your code is good or bad. I care that you can look at code and tell me if it smells, if it's good or bad code structurally. If you can point out the problems with it, maybe you could never write that code as well as the AI. That's okay. But I think people are still focused on like, well, I got to do X, Y, and Z. It's like, I I've been coding for 15 years. AI codes better than I do, but I also know where it's bad. So learning that distinction, knowing enough about AI to know where it's bad at coding, once you start using it enough to have a feeling for that, like now you have a real skill, and that's how you figure out how a way to demonstrate that in the job market, and you will have a lot more success in the coming year.
So that's exactly what every technologist have in mind. Experienced technologists, right, who have been in the industry for 20 years have in mind. So yeah, stop depending completely on AI. You learn,
Mhm.
then you use it as a support system.
AI AI cannot give you a growth mindset. It cannot make you curious. But a curious person with the power of AI is really valuable hire. So like be the curious person. Try to know more about AI than AI does. Try to bring information that AI doesn't have into it. Give it the context. Be the curiosity, extra length of curiosity that AI doesn't have.
That's a well put quote. James, we come to the end of the podcast. This conversation reminds me that the future isn't something we predict, it's something we take responsibility for building.
Yes.
Thank you for the work you're doing, you have done, and sharing this journey with us. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It's been a wonderful chat. Have a great rest of your day.
And to our listeners, if this conversation helped you think differently about AI and your career, do share it with someone who's building and leading teams. This is What Out One Talks with Sachin Menon. See you in the next episode.